Did Oscar Piastri really deserve the sanction that left him off the podium in Brazil? Or are we witnessing another episode of questionable decisions by the FIA that could change the course of the 2025 championship? The 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix was set to be one of the turning points of the season. With McLaren leading the Constructors' Championship and Oscar Piastri consolidated as one of the most consistent contenders for the title, any detail in a high-voltage race like Interlagos could alter the course of the World Championship. But no one imagined that everything would change so drastically in just 6 laps. The context could not be more challenging. After a start to the race marked by the tension accumulated since free practice and a first phase neutralized by the safety car, the restart on lap 6 opened the floodgates of contained aggression. Piastri, positioned behind Andrea Kimi Antonelli and Charles Leclerc, identified an immediate opportunity when approaching turn 1, one of the most emblematic and treacherous areas of the José Carlos Pace circuit. The maneuver that the Australian executed was, without a doubt, bold, but also carefully thought out from a risk-reward point of view. He launched himself around the inside of the curve with the intention of gaining 2 positions at once, knowing that his teammate Lando Norris was at the front, leading with ease. The chance to put McLaren in an early 1-2 situation and control the race pace was too tempting to pass up. However, at that moment several variables were crossed. The first was the entry angle of Antonelli, who in his attempt to protect the line, closed towards the apex without noticing that Piastri had already committed his car to the inside. The second was the reduction in visibility and grip in that area, a product of the debris on the track from the recent restart. The third, and most decisive, was the blocking of the McLaren's left front tire, which occurred just when the brake was released with millimeter pressure to avoid contact. That small technical slip made the difference between a brilliant maneuver and an inevitable accident. The impact was instantaneous. Piastri touched Antonelli, and he in turn was thrown towards the side of Leclerc's Ferrari. The Monegasque's car suffered immediate structural damage, breaking the suspension and leaving his car unusable on the side of the track. Charles, who was already having problems with the pace of the SF25 in low-adhesion sectors, had to abandon immediately, while Antonelli and Piastri managed to continue without visible damage, although the Australian would later receive a penalty that would rewrite the podium. But the most important thing was not only the result of the incident, but the symbolic load it represented. This moment crystallized many of the tensions that had been brewing in the season. The rise of McLaren as a dominant power, the emotional fragility of new talents like Antonelli compared to already established drivers like Piastri, and above all, the growing perception of arbitrariness in the decisions of the FIA, whose interpretations of the regulations seem to always be under review. From a technical point of view, the Piastri maneuver can be analyzed through several lenses. In terms of overlap, the McLaren's front axle did not reach the Mercedes rearview mirror before the apex, which according to current driving guidelines did not give it the right to the line. But this interpretation leaves out the dynamic context. Piastri was already engaged, the steering angle limited him to a minimal physical margin, and the intention to avoid contact was evident in his progressive braking. This was neither a desperate action nor a rookie mistake. It was a move by a high-level driver who bets everything in a fraction of a second, calculating the maximum benefit for the team and its position in the championship. And yet the line between brilliant and sanctionable was once again defined by subsequent interpretation, not real-time execution. This block, this moment, changed the course of the race and possibly the season. Not only because of the lost points, but because it opened another crack in the relationship between the drivers and the race management. A crack that, with each controversial decision, seems more difficult to close. When Oscar Piastri crossed the finish line at Interlagos knowing that he had lost a sure podium due to a penalty that he felt was unjustified, he didn't just finish a race. A storm was starting. And he did it as very few young drivers dare. With a firm voice, a defiant look and a clear message, not only to the FIA, but to the entire Formula One ecosystem. His reaction was not an emotional outpouring in the heat of the moment. It was a political statement. The first sign of his indignation came over the team radio, as soon as contact occurred. "He didn't leave me any room," he said, referring to Antonelli, while trying to understand how such a compromised maneuver ended in a sanction that seemed to punish the attempt more than the result. And if anyone expected that as the minutes passed, the Australian would moderate his tone, the opposite happened. In the mixed zone, in front of the microphones, Piastri not only defended the maneuver, he turned her into a symbol. "I can't disappear," he said with a mix of irony and conviction, explaining that his car was already firmly positioned at the apex, and that he had no physical margin to avoid contact. These words, far from sounding like an excuse, were a direct criticism of the evaluation system that the commissioners applied. I was in control, I made the movement with full awareness. Yes, I blocked slightly, but that was because I tried to brake as much as possible to avoid contact. His statement also had a powerful echo in the paddock. Various pilots, without directly mentioning it, commented on the need to review the race maneuver criteria. Former engineers and analysts in specialized media began to publish comparisons between similar incidents that were not sanctioned. Even some big-name former drivers backed Piastri's interpretation, saying the kind of maneuvers that make the sport great are at risk of being eliminated by regulatory bureaucracy. After reviewing the incident between Oscar Piastri, Kimi Antonelli and Charles Leclerc at the restart of lap 6 of the Brazilian Grand Prix, the International Automobile Federation acted with a forcefulness that left no room for intermediate interpretations. The official report was direct. Piastri was considered fully responsible for the collision. But behind that categorical statement lies a network of criteria, technical interpretations and precedents that deserve to be examined closely. The FIA's argumentative basis was its new driving standards protocol, a series of guides that seek to establish more objective parameters for overtaking maneuvers. These guidelines specifically define when a driver attacking on the inside is entitled to the racing line. He must have reached a significant overlap, measured when the front axle of the attacking car is level with the mirror of the car in front, before reaching the apex of the corner. In Piastri's case, the commissioners argued that this condition was not met. According to them, at the critical moment of entering Turn 1, the Australian's McLaren had not yet reached level with Antonelli's Mercedes, therefore he had no right to force space on the inside. This assessment was reinforced by the fact that Piastri blocked while braking, which was interpreted as a loss of control, although the pilot himself explained that this block was intentional to minimize further contact. The penalty was 10 seconds added to his final time and the addition of 2 penalty points to his super license. But what raised the tension was the way in which the FIA initially communicated the number of points accumulated by the driver. In an administrative error that was later corrected, it was suggested that Piastri was just 2 points away from being suspended for one race, which would have been devastating in the context of a championship in the midst of a fight. Although this confusion was quickly cleared up, it served to intensify the perception of sloppiness in the handling of the case. Technically, Piastri argued that he was committed to the line and that there was no room to disappear. He also assured that the blockage was controlled and that at no time did he lose control of the car. Several analysts supported his position, stating that the fact of being inside, even without completely surpassing the rival car, forces the outside driver to foresee that possibility and partially give in. This argument clashes head-on with the strict vision of the stewards, but opens the door to a broader reflection. If we continue to penalize aggressive but controlled maneuvers, what kind of races are we encouraging? The 10-second penalty imposed on Oscar Piastri at the Brazilian Grand Prix was not a simple penalty. It was a piece that, when moved the McLaren driver from 2nd to 5th place in the final classification, altering not only the race podium, but the delicate balance in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. But beyond the standings, the impact of this decision spread like a seismic wave through the paddock, media, social media, and of course, McLaren's strategy room. And now that you know all the angles of this story, from the millimeter maneuver that altered the race at Interlagos, to the battle between the regulations and the interpretation of the stewards, I ask you directly, do you believe that Oscar Piastri was the victim of an unfair decision or that his aggressiveness exceeded the limits of the current regulations? Where do we draw the line between brave overtaking and punishable recklessness? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.